So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our Fireside Chats with Asian Pathfinders. Really great session today. I know a lot of you do know that we are holding cybersecurity sessions the entire month of June. So, this is part of that series. And today we have two amazing speakers, one from the industry, one from the law enforcement, joining us to speak on the organizational preparedness for cyber attacks of the future. So before I give it to our moderator, Charumati Haran, just a brief about Asian Pathfinders. So we are a knowledge sharing platform. Our aim is to bring scholars, academic practitioners, as we've done today, also to have these constructive dialogues and discussions on a multitude of topics. So this month, cybersecurity, last month was India's internal security. Prior to that, there was something else, and you're going to see amazing sessions in future too. We do that through our Fireside Chats, which is every Saturday, other than the last Saturday of the month, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We get experts, we have these focused discussions on a topic as we have today. And then we also have panel discussions that we call dialogues, which is the last Thursday of the month. It's in the evening at 5:30. That's about an hour and a half long session. And again, we always see an informal way to connect for everyone across the globe. Any feedback, any suggestions, do you want to be part of this? We have had people come and tell us that we'd like to be part of this. And that's how we've had our speakers and moderators. So please reach out to us and we'll be happy to do it.
Camera is on.
Put you in our session. So again, about our future sessions. So like I said, we have a series of cybersecurity sessions in the month of June. Tomorrow, we have a session on stress and anxiety management in the time of COVID. For this, we are doing the session jointly with sorry about this, I have a cough and that's about it. We're doing this jointly with Project Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It's in the morning at 10:30. If any one of you wants to join, Stress will put the link in the chat section. It's primarily for frontline workers, but I think in the times of COVID, those workshop, we have an expert psychotherapist joining us who will be guiding this, but it's for everyone to join and just learn from each other's experience. So the guidelines, the first and foremost, please stay on mute. And just because we record these sessions and we put them on YouTube later, also respect the views of others and intellectual property also, because all of us worked really, really hard for the work that we put out. And I think everyone should get due credit for their work, and that's something we really strongly believe in. And again, lastly, just like I said, do not post any defamatory, abusive content. We've never had to remove anyone, and I don't want to start now, so please. And this is just a way for us to stay connected. You can look us up on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So our new team member, I don't know if she's able to join us today. She insisted that we have an Instagram account because that's the way we can connect with younger students and everyone. So we have one now. Again, today's session is on organizational preparedness of future cyber attacks. So our moderator today is Charumati Haran, who's a master's student for public policy at Hertie School in Berlin, Germany. Prior to that, Charumati has worked for NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation, and she's also worked for the social organizations. Her interests lie in technology, public policy, and how these two integrate. And that's why she's our moderator today. So over to you, Charumati.
Thank you, Pallavi. This topic today is particularly interesting for me after working in a public-private organization. And we have both sides of those represented today. We have Satyavathi, who will, I think, represent the entire private sector for us. And we also have Dr. Balsing, who will speak on behalf of the public sector. I will introduce both of them shortly. But first, to our topic for the day. India recorded around 15 million brute force attacks in Jan and Feb of this year. And in fact, during COVID, the pandemic caused almost a 300% rise in the number of attacks that happened. Many of these attacks happened in companies that we are familiar with: Airtel, Big Basket, Air India, Udemy, and so on. I should mention that many of the companies do not confirm these attacks, so these are alleged. We'll be hearing a lot of that word today, since stakeholder views will differ. A particular challenge that I'm hoping we'll talk about today is how the pandemic has caused a rise in attacks on critical services. And the pandemic has also changed what qualifies as a critical service. In certain sectors, such as manufacturing, logistics, and medicine, maybe they would not have been considered so critical before the pandemic happened. However, we've changed a lot of definitions since then. Preparedness as a whole covers everything from the pre-attack preparedness all the way to the post-attack forensics. And I think our speakers will have ideas to share on all stages of those. Both our organizations will have different stakeholders, different levels of preparedness, different kinds of threats that they face, and a different outlook to the future. And using my moderator's prerogative, I am going to start by introducing Ms. Satyavathi first. She has been working as the Chief Cybersecurity Architect at Microfocus. She's also the chairman of the CSA Bangalore chapter and a global advisory board member of CTIA in EC Council. With over 22 years of experience in banking, telecom, IT, ITES, and the media industries, and a leadership position in News Corp, Cognizant, Wells Fargo, Capgemini, IBM, and Tata Communications Limited, she has been working in the sector for a long time with a lot of expertise. And cross-functional expertise at that in cloud security, security operations, application security, network security, identity governance and administration, and data security. She's a noted public speaker, and I have had the pleasure of hearing her in multiple forums before this, and she's often noted as one of the few women leaders in the field. Ms. Satyavathi, would you be okay starting off?
Thank you for such a kind introduction, Charumati or Charu. Appreciate that. And thank you for having me here in this panel. I look forward to share my opinions on this topic. You know, the threats are emerging as the industry is actually growing faster and quicker every day. So I'm looking forward for discussing that. So once the introductions are over, Charu. Thank you.
Excellent. Dr. Balsing also joins us, and he is currently a serving police officer in the Maharashtra State Police, a speaker and a researcher. He is with the, the Preventive Crime Branch at Mumbai City, and he has first-hand experience of building 51 cyber labs and 43 cyber police stations for cybercrime investigation in Maharashtra State. An absolutely unique contribution from what I understand. One of those key projects was the implementation of the Automatic Multimodal Biometric Identification System project. And I expect that's one of the case studies he may talk about today. This means a lot of work with key stakeholders such as the Maharashtra Computer Emergency Response Team. And he's also added this on with a lot of academic qualifications and training, such as being the Shipping Cybersecurity Fellow 2017 of UK and the International Visiting Leadership Program Fellow at the US. With all his experience leading multiple teams and in maintaining law and order, I'm expecting some very interesting inputs from him as well. Ms. Satyavathi, you ready to go? Starting us off with private sector.
Sure. So let me start with introducing the topic, right? So already Charu has given a very clear indication of what we are going through today. I think there is a tremendous growth of IT, or we can say digital adoption. So whether it is a small shop on the corner who's looking to sell their items, whatever they are selling regularly physically, now they want to sell it online, right? And at the same time, the largest banks earlier never used to do offline transactions. Now they're actually ready to go through e-KYC. You do not need to come to bank, we just do the KYC online, right? So that's the trend we are observing, which is actually more towards the trends. What we are observing is customer-centric banking as one of the part I said. Government is provisioning something like eKYC and other areas. The second is electronic healthcare. So doctor says, you don't need to come to a hospital. Just you can call me, tell me your symptoms. Let's have a video call, do the consultation online, right? So that is happening. I'm not speaking about US, I'm speaking about India. Doctor on call is in, and e-learning is something which is going on. And apart from that, I think key parts I think you quoted is about critical infrastructure, right? Critical infrastructure of our India, the smart governance, I'm just speaking not just for India, but in general, the smart governance aspect is increasing because it's not possible for you to call, make everything offline now. So there are a lot of things happening online. If we are already adopting smart governance earlier, that is growing faster. And another aspect which we are also observing in the trends is like increased adoption of smart vehicles, smart phones and things like that. So the future is already here. I think COVID-19 and pandemic have brought this change much faster. It could have taken maybe 10 years, but it just happened in 1 year that the digitalization increased, right? So what does it mean to the cybersecurity? That is the adoption which we are thinking about. What happens in that case? So this increased digitization is increasing cloud adoption, increasing the mobility, increasing the usage of smart vehicles, smart mobiles, smart healthcare. All these things is actually increasing the attack surface itself, right? So with increased attack surface, so what happens now is the attack could happen on a car which you are driving, or when you are in the hospital, your phone could be hacked, and or the so these are all the concerns people are having, right? So how this could happen? You might wonder that how is this possible? So with this increased usage of IT, right, you find trends like AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. There are advanced techniques of malware coming in, which is not visible anywhere. It actually could be well hidden within a mail, it could be well hidden in a PDF file, or even just a picture, right? So that's possible. Through that, the attacks can penetrate through. And attacks are not stopping at that layer. Actually, there is an imposition of voice. You might have already heard the fake voice fabrication and fake videos coming in, fake news. And since a lot of automation is happening on the digitization, so there are attacks through the automated botnets, right? So which means for example, instead of Pallavi speaking there, you might find a robot exactly looking like Pallavi and talking there. And you might wonder, yes, it is Pallavi, but it is not, right? There is a possibility. The AI can make it possible. And I was wondering, yeah, it's possible. And what you need to give is just one picture and an AI module. That's it. It will start speaking. Einstein starts moving. I've seen that, right? So this is possible with the advanced technologies what we are observing, right? So considering the type of threats what we are seeing and what we are observing, as I think the session is well drafted, right? How do you prepare to such kind of attacks today and in future, right? So if the attackers are using AI and ML, we can't go with the standard good old PC, right? We also need to use AI and ML in the threat intelligence, in the threat detection, threat response. Not only that, even not just detection and response, but how do we embed security within the data itself? When you are using the data, can we actually do some encryption or do some kind of protection so that it is not going to be leaked? Or how can we actually secure the applications when in the design phase, shift left, right? And how do we manage this huge lot of identities coming, whether it is a bot identity or a machine identity or a user identity? How do you handle that? So these are the various things which we need to address. I think there are techniques and tools available which could address all this, and it is evolving. And there are, I think we can speak more about it in maybe later. But the point here, what I'm trying to make is, it's always the case, right? So since police is here, I'm just giving a standard classic example. It's always police running behind the thief. It happens the same thing in the cyber world. Actually, the attackers and hackers are more collaborative. They have only one target, attack. That's it. They don't have anything else. Whereas we have a lot of rules to follow. We should not harm anyone. We should actually go through the system. We need to follow the process, all these things. Whereas attackers can do almost all the things, and they are very good in sharing as well, right? So if an incident happened, whether any organization is ready to tell that this is the weakness and this is how I addressed it, this is the best practice, It's very difficult to tell that. Whereas attackers will tell, this is how you can penetrate, and they do share and collaborate. So that is another area which is, I think, forums like this are helping, where we are actually discussing what are the trends, what are the best practices. By discussing it, I think we are actually doing some sort of collaboration. May not be to that level of thick thieves, so that is the scale at which we need to think in on how can we do open collaboration among the industry, among the nations, so that we can address these large scale threats which are developing. Yeah. With that, I think I'll give it back to Charu so for the following conversation.
That was a great note to stop that presentation on, at least. Moving from the discussion on thick as thieves to the people thieves should be afraid of, then. Dr. Balsing, if you're ready.
Yeah. Namaskar. Charumati ji, Pallavi ji, Satyavathi ji. Thank you very much for the opportunity, first of all. I will start with the line Satyavathi has kept open for me, is that thief is always ahead of police. Yeah, it's true, because who takes the first shot is very important. Thief have a first chance to do it, and then we have to find it out. A defense guy has to defend everything. A penetration guy has to penetrate from a single point. His only aim is to find the vulnerability and penetrate. But the defense guy has to manage thousands of such vulnerabilities. It's just like we can say, building a trust with a person or organization takes hundreds of years. But a single incidence may create an environment of distrust. So taking from this, I will first put the topic in my perspective, is that let us first consider the organizational setup in Indian context. So we may not directly compare how the European or maybe American or maybe Chinese or Japanese companies, their structures and their public sector. We have to put this problem into very much Indianization of that problem. That is putting the organizational preparedness in Indian context. First, we have immense manpower regarding IT, but we have less institutional, organizational, and industry spaces in respect to cybersecurity and even the digital technologies. You may agree that most of the companies, may it be USA-based, European-based, are being run, or Indian talent is critical to that. But come back to India, we don't have such organizational, structural, institutions which are backed by this talent. So this is the first point we have to take into context, because we have talent, but we don't have organizational and institutionalization to solve the problem. Second, now take the case of India. India is in a unique position. Why? The threats, particularly cyber threats, first, misinformation campaigns, second, fake news, third, and the we can say disinformation or misinformation about the Indian industries, particularly the startups and the big companies, is happening. To understand this problem, we have to first put India and its problem in a proper perspective. We are the 5th largest economy. We are not competing with those who are small players. Now our competition is with the superpowers. Superpowers in cyber world. We are a threat to US in case of economy. We are a threat to Russia in case of economy. We are a threat to China in case of economy. Entire OECD bloc. So if you see from industry and commerce perspective, our economy is basically competing with them. So this will give you first perspective. Second is that who are our enemies in cyber world? So our enemy is, they are big players. They are playing with proxies. Take example of Pakistan, playing with proxies. Take example of China, playing with proxies, and other host of the nations. Because if we develop most of our cybersecurity or digital industries, these industries are basically is a competition to the established industries of these nations. We may pluck no, what your pie they are eating, we are going to pluck that. And that is, we have to see why the misinformation and about Indian industries, Indian public sector, or the Indian talent, or particularly India is about. So this we have to see first. The third thing I will put Indian context is that we are a nation of young people. We have more than 40% of the people who are young. Most of them are able to understand the technology, and we are in a phase of startup. So government of India has rightly put the startup India, digital India, and digitizing the most of public sector, because this is a need of the hour. Why? Because we have that kind of talent. We need to nurture that talent and use that talent for growth of the country. But here comes the organizations. Now, take back to the organization. What kind of organizations do we have? We have all the organizations, whatever we have, are working in an age, which is we can say conventional age. They have an inertia to, the labor organizations, or the inertia to oppose the change in organizational environment. They don't want to adopt the new technologies. But what the problem is with the Indian organizations is that due to COVID-19, the changes in digitization that could have been happened in 10 years of span, or maybe five years of span, have taken place in 1 year. So you might experience that such kind of conferences were not happening digitally. They were a physical thing. We have to adopt it abruptly. Second, most of the medical transportation, take a transportation even of liquor, take a transportation, or maybe online food serving industry. It happened abruptly because the environment in which the organizations are working quickly changed due to COVID-19. And so the digitization in financial sector, in transportation sector, in service delivery, in entertainment, and in government service delivery abruptly changed due to COVID. This is the situation. But what about the human resource that is working in that industries, particularly public sector? It is the same people with the same mindset, with the same skill set, with the same inertia to oppose the change. So this is the third issue. The fourth that I will put in is that the disruptive technologies. We have a settled industries, and the organizations have settled businesses. The disruptive technologies, for example, take e-commerce. E-commerce has disrupted most of our small time businesses, particularly take grocery shops, take small dealers, take the household industry. It has provided avenues also, but it has also disrupted their supply and distribution chain that was earlier they were having. So this second example I would like, the disruptive change that has happened with suppose the food industry, because earlier the home delivery was not the case, but now the home delivery players are arriving. The standalone we can say food industry, particularly hotel restaurants, now has to suffer losses due to online or OTT platforms. The thousands of, we can say, the theaters with a much heavy investment has to be a losses. This is what the disruptive technologies, and the same thing with the public sector. Public sector has also faced the same fate due to these disruptive technologies. The fourth and the last point that I would like to make is that, particularly in case of India, is that defense, law enforcement, and the other security organizations are also due to force, because force of market, force to adopt the technologies, force of attackers is making us, we can say, inevitable to adopt such kind of technologies. In case of law enforcement, we have to change our mindset and focus more on cybercrime. We were not focusing, but now in COVID, due to all digital transactions, we were forced to pay more attention, because the force is basically no, moving us from that inertia that was keeping us static. So now law enforcement industry, defense, infrastructural industries, all are now getting digital. Most of the financial, particularly public sector financial industries, have taken to digitization, and their organizations have a settled SOP. They, I think so, 10 years before they adopted this change, and they are running no good. If you see, now after putting this problem in Indian perspectives, what I have to tell the audience is that, now see, this is the position of India and what kind of threats and from whom we are going to face. Now, from whom? We are not facing threats from script kiddies. We are not having threats from the lone wolf attackers. Our main attackers are state-sponsored groups, state-sponsored organization. Those are proxies. They may pretend to be a business organization. They may pretend to be a small group of hackers, but they are backed by the respective governments who are our adversaries. Second, nation state, they are also, particularly nation states are engaged in misinformation. Take what happened when Galwan thing happened. Take example, whenever there is a firing on the western side, particularly Pakistan, the misinformation campaign is launched. Whatever initiatives, suppose 370, whenever that section was was removed, there was a surge in misinformation about India from Pakistan, particularly China, Pakistan. So this is what happens to, we can say, the information war is a war of perception that is happening, and this war of perception have also a bearing on organizations, particularly commercial organizations, financial organizations, because this create environment of distrust with the global players. Our organization, our entities are seen in the shadow of that, and we lose business, particularly public sector or maybe private sector. So these are the agents. So third important agent that is after India is organized crime syndicates, particularly narcotics, organ harvesting, human trafficking. These syndicates are now operating in digital space. So we have to look into from this perspective. Institutional business groups, particularly in corporate espionage, are rampantly working, particularly in India. Why? Because our organizations are going to be competitors of these big companies who are multinationals presently having no much of business in India. If our organization get boost, they are going to get we are going to pluck their piece of pie. So these are the agents. Now, if you see, when the to put thing in perspective, how the business entities or multinational companies is also engaged in this, when the India was and is moving the data protection bill, that time regarding data protection bill, how misinformation is being spread. We have a stringent GDPR. We have a stringent Cloud Act. We have a stringent Cybersecurity Act of China. But are the multinational companies talking about that? No, but they are talking about how a localization should not happen in India, how a stringent data protection act should not be in India. This is how we can say the nation states and their proxies as we can say multinational companies, they are opposing the change, because we are a nation of great data assets. We have 1.3 billion people, and we can say 1.3 billion into 10 data points, we are in trillions. Okay, so trillions of data points, no one want to lose. They want to keep us as an, data farms. We are just like a data farms to the companies, to mature their machines, to mature their algorithms, to launch their products, maybe a free product, and later on, once addicted, make it to harness the money. That is how it is working. Now, after understanding this, who are the threat agents, let us now focus which are the future attacks that India particularly will be facing. That is, now you might have heard the APTs. The APTs till so far 30, 35, whatever APTs we have till so far discovered by the world. There are many more advanced persistent threats that are particularly into defense, into critical infrastructure, and corporate espionage that few countries are placing it. Second, we have now will be facing, the US faced the colonial pipe attack. This is a critical infrastructure, gas pipelines, the rails, then the ports. These are all critical infra. It's not the only colonial pipeline faced attack. India also faced the similar attack with JNPT. If you see the JNPT attack in 2017 by Petian. So that is the same, because we we had to stop the operations of the JNPT port for some days. Maybe a global multinational company, Merck, got hit, but it ultimately resulted into the critical infra of India, particularly JNPT, which is having 40% of the sea traffic. Disruptive malwares in operational technologies. Now, most of our private industries, public industries are using the operational technologies using IoTs. But the disruptive malwares, now, if you see the attacks, what happened in Natanz in Iran, we can say it as a Stuxnet. How an operational technologies can be targeted with a specific payloads. And same thing may happen with the operational technologies and in India. So deepfakes, how Satyavathi also mentioned, is that deepfakes is going to be a big thing in India, because it's a democratic country. Perception management, society manipulation, opinion manipulation, knowledge manipulation, information manipulation, all this is going to happen with the deepfakes. Now, you can say that Twitter is not following the Indian rules. Why? Because they believe that they are above the laws of India. The laws of the lands are above everyone. If you want to work in India, we have to follow the Indian rules. But multinational companies particularly come with a different mindset. This is a mindset of, we can say, colonization. This is a mindset of imperialism. This kind of mindset is not only with Twitter, but most of the nations and most of the companies, and that we are going to face. Now it's a start, but this kind of rebellions, or this kind of we can say things we are going to face in future. Data thefts, leaks, data harvesting, all these things. It's not only data leaks. We are already a data harvesting country. Everyone is harvesting Indian data. Take the name of any startup in digital world elsewhere in the world, they are harvesting data from India, because the other block, which is having 1.35 billion people, is China, and they have a shield. They have a golden shield. They don't allow to harvest data. Then for the entire world, we are digital farms. They are being harvesting. So data leak and harvesting is going to be a big thing in the coming futures. That are the future attacks. And also data manipulation. is going to be a big thing in coming future. If you see the particularly financial industry, financial sector, and the other important critical sector are going to face the specialized malware. I will like to remind you that the banks, Indian banks, have faced it. Take example of Cosmos. Cosmos lost 94 crore rupees in a span of 8 hours with groups like Lazarus and the malwares like Jews. They have a specialized switch, specialized malwares for Indian banking. And our small time banks don't have a great cybersecurity environment and tools and technologies. And they are targeting this. And this is going to rampantly increase. The last two things is what kind of future attacks India is going to face is organized or syndicated attacks. What we see, the organized or syndicated attacks, is on the organizations, particularly the public sector organizations, to defame them, to confuse them. So these are going to be the new thing. The last one is corporate espionage will be rampant in future. We don't consider it an attack, but it is the biggest thing, because companies will be wiped out if their IPs is stolen. What the company, suppose it take a startup has nothing but the IP and innovative idea and that innovative algorithm. More than that, the company don't have anything else. If that is being espionaged and that IP is stolen, the company is nothing but a bunch of people and crying for their IP. So these are some of the, we can say, the attacks future India is going to have. Now my last some takes. So what to key takeaways? The before may I ask the Charumati, do I have 5 minutes, or have I exhausted entire my time?
I think we have time for one quick key takeaway.
Okay.
The most
so,
important.
Extremely sorry. I have 5 key takeaways, but I will try to be honest and deliver what I wanted to. So the key takeaway is that we, as an organization, public or private sector, is not going to stop each and every attack. But what we have to prepare for is for resilience and cybersecurity maturity. So this is first takeaway. Second, the businesses has to see the cyber threat or the cyber security not from the perspective of security or IT security or is another investment burden, but has to see the cyber security from business continuity point of view. Third, the IT security is not an IT guy's problem. It's board or a management problem. The fourth takeaway is that just like in pandemic, we have learned that good food is a medicine. It builds food and not medicine as a food. Like that, we have to build the paying ransom as a habit. Instead of that, use awareness, sensitization as the food or the. We have to pay more reliance on human resource of the company equally with the technologies. What is most of the problems that has, or most of the attacks has happened due to the insiders, or maybe due to the unaware employee who has clicked email. So, and the last thing is that the attackers and maybe the agents behind the attackers are not only after your money, they are also after your data, and they are also after disrupting the national security. These are the aspects, key takeaways. Thank you. I am extremely sorry that I have messed up with your time management.
No, I think I don't blame you. There is a lot of interesting things that can be said about this particular topic. And I'm looking forward to quizzing Satyavathi on this now. I think it's interesting that Sir spoke a lot about companies as part of his speech. Of course, companies and the government must work together. And what I'm wondering is, what are companies in India required to do by law as such? Because one of the complaints I hear about is that the legal framework isn't that clear, it's fragmented, it doesn't actually place enough responsibility and accountability on companies. How is it from your perspective?
So this is actually a tricky question, practically speaking. Law is never something which can address every problem in the world, right? Laws are written only when there is a issue happened and we are trying to solve it. Then government comes up with a law to enforce, or it shouldn't happen, to prevent that. So what happens in this case is technology always leads, and the regulation comes later. Because technology is something which you are doing to actually address the business requirement. So business comes first, and then the technology comes to solve it. And then when you solve the technology problem, there are always gaps and weaknesses and loopholes. And then to address it, or there will be thieves, as the way we said earlier, there are attackers which exploit it. And we understand these are the concerns which should be addressed. And how do we address? Then we require legal regulations, and regulations comes later. So the point what I'm trying to make is there is a possibility that there are certain technologies which are in the world. We may not have laws and regulations very tightly written, because it's not possible, because it haven't happened so far, right? Let's say, think about IoT, right? So IoT is pretty new in the industry. We do not have kind of regulations for how do we handle an IoT attack. If it happens from a bot, how do we handle it? And who will be accountable for it? So I'm just speaking about one of the areas, but the point here is we shouldn't blame that there is no laws and regulations to address it. Let me do it, right? That's not the way it is. So if you see about the laws and regulations, what we are speaking now, GDPR or PDP, whatever, that's actually a regulation written long before, maybe 100 and 200 years back. There's a trust between patient and the doctor, right? It's a well-written rule that whatever is shared with the doctor, it should not be revealed. Right? So that's a privacy aspect, which was a well-written rule, right? So what is happening now is it's beyond a person's, what you can say, hand. It's actually getting digital. So when it is getting digital, who will ensure that ownership of this, for example, taking the example of the patient information, let's say. So who will be responsible in case that leaks? The person who actually collects the data, right? That person owns it. No matter where you posted it, where you loaded that data, if you loaded it on cloud, so you shouldn't blame on cloud provider, that cloud provider didn't do it, I can't do anything. No, the person who actually collected it is responsible and accountable. I'm very confident with our laws, what we have written. I think Rajput sir mentioned earlier already. So our laws, whatever we have written, the PDP bill, and then the other regulation, IT Act, solid laws are put in to actually address all these requirements. As the way people say it, it's very difficult to understand and interpret the law, because each person interprets it differently, right? Depending upon the viewpoint, how they are reading it. That's always possible, because it has to address a massive number of problems in a very specific way and address it and limit it. So coming back to the point on the accountability and ownership. So whether we are taking a PCI issue where a bank need to follow complying with payment card information, or it is a healthcare information which need to be managed by a healthcare company or a hospital. So it all lands up back to the owner of an organization, right? Owner of the bank itself, irrespective of whether there is a third party involved, whether there is a developer involved, whoever it is, I think the end responsibility comes to that. So that is something, even I think I speak about the, considering your question, it's all about preparedness. Think about the cloud adoption, right? So when you are actually moving this workloads onto cloud, I'm not taking any name of the bank, but there are some Indian companies where the information got leaked from cloud, right? So when the information got leaked from cloud, because of a third party who loaded that information on a storage which is actually having weakness and was exploited, that third party is the one which was questioned. To me, it's not the case. It is the bank which is responsible to ensure the entire supply chain security is taken care. End-to-end responsibility is owned by the owner of the organization. So that is something which is already written in our IT Act long before, not just the latest one, right? It's about the body, the entity which is actually running the business have to own it. All the minimum required security controls necessary. So that is how I address it. I think if we go behind the law, there are always different ways and conventions. It is not written or it's written. It's written this way. It's written that way. I'm not a lawyer to speak about it, but I think I'm confident with our system, what is written and what is documented. It's more about the principles, and it's more about the organizations to actually take our accountability and own it.
That was an excellent answer, and that really leaves me the field open to ask a lot of interesting questions.
Okay.
It is tough to decide, and yet I will ask the one that just came up in the chat just to broaden this discussion further. And the question is asking, what are the kind of state actor attacks we can anticipate on CBDCs and cryptocurrencies if they are made legal tender in the future? Open to both of you.
Okay, so this is a futuristic question. What if Bitcoin is legal, and what if there is an attack on Bitcoin? Right? I understand that's the question.
That is what I'm as well.
Okay. More than that, speaking about Bitcoin, think about general digital currency, right? So why we are thinking about Bitcoin? Bitcoin is not something that you can't exploit or it can be leaked. No, don't see that. You might have seen in the last few years, the value of the Bitcoin is reducing. There are multiple reasons for it. I recommend you to read it. That's one thing. Second is there a reason why a state actor should penetrate into this cryptocurrency or any currency per se? I think I come back to the proper rule of the motive of attack. Right? Any attack happens because there is a motive. So motive here is the money. If the money is in the digital format, let's say the cryptocurrency, which is a digital currency practically, or your wallet, which is actually in your mobile, which is accessible through your two-factor authentication and the app, right? So that is a motive. The motive is the money. Or in the other case, the motive is the money which you can get by leaking the company's information outside. The motive could be the leakage of or holding entire nation at stake for 30 minutes, right? So the motives could be anything, right? These state actors, I think Balsing Rajput can add more, but state actors are actually done in multi-layered attacks. It is not just one person, you will see it immediately. There are always a chain of what you can say people working behind it to make that happen. So you might see a surface of, what this happened from this organization or that organization. There is something behind it. There is something behind it. There is something behind it. So there is a state-sponsored attack. Actually, it happened. Whether it is a Sony attack or whether it is the political drama which happened in US. So there is always something, some motivation behind it. If there is enough motivation, yes, you can anticipate. If the question is, can you anticipate? Yes, you can anticipate. Sir, I think I look forward to your comments as well on this.
Yeah, so it's not what if we are facing the attack of cryptocurrencies. You have to see from different perspective. After 2016 demonetization, many people put the money in cryptocurrencies, and now they have lost that money. Maybe in the gamble, because cryptocurrencies sometimes they are rising up, sometimes they are going down. Ethereum is going to, the founder of Ethereum vanishes. Many people have lost the money. So it's nothing but making your wallet empty. And those who are having a cash, they put entire their cash after demonetization into the cryptocurrencies, and they have lost it. So it's just draining the Indian wealth, and it has happened. So if you see from that perspective, and it's not, I am not talking from the air, there are cases registered because people have lost money. is one thing. It's not only about crime, but it is how they are, the people who are sitting outside the country, maybe criminal syndicate, maybe state-sponsored group, are basically draining the money. A second thing is about you are referring the cryptocurrencies as currencies. That cryptos don't have an inherent value. A currency have an inherent value. It's just a piece of a material which you are comparing with the dollar, which is also an hypothetical. There is no real basis to it. It is a perfect scam to loot the people. So this is what has happened all over world. If a cryptocurrency has to run by an regulatory organization, like suppose in India, RBI is mulling, I think so, over that. So it's by the RBI. If it has to be operated in elsewhere, it has to be operated by a regulatory organization with the government backing. Money is not is just a piece of paper unless until it is backed by the sovereign guarantee. Otherwise, it's a piece of paper. Like that, the cryptos has to be backed by regulatory organizations, by the sovereign country. Then only it is a money. It also have another connotations of liquidity and transferability and ease in transaction and trust and all these things. But I don't think so. It's I don't believe that these cryptocurrencies are going to change. The present nature of cryptocurrencies are going to change something. They are going to cause a greater harm to general public, because they will be losing their money. Few will be making money, but they will be the conmans. They are who are controlling it. Normal person, a investor, is going to lose it. So that is. But if that, I am not blaming the blockchain as a technology. I am blaming only it's one of the use case, maybe Ethereum, maybe Bitcoin, maybe any other, because that is not a good case to be in money. So that is my take.
I think this allows me to ask one more question about cryptocurrency before we move away. We did get one very interesting question in the messages, and this is specifically for Dr. Balsing. Given the recent case with Colonial Pipeline, can we say that law enforcement agencies in India have the ability to trace transactions and to store the assets they recover the way the US has done?
Question is a bit tricky, and whether Indian law enforcement agencies have the because skill set is something different. Access to the information is something different. As most of the crypto companies and their servers are in US, are in control of US, they have the access to their servers. In regard to skills, yes, Indian law enforcement agencies also have, not everyone, but few police officers, few organizations have good skill. But access, because once it is out of country, we have very limited access. We may track, but recovering that, getting that back into the country, it's because it is governed by the diplomatic relations. It is governed by the MLAT, means mutual legal treaties. It is governed by the what kind of relations we have with that country. Because it's not a straightforward a technology thing or a tracking thing. It's a we have to see diplomacy, nation-state relations with the other nation-state. All that we have to see. That basically information fetching or getting information from the foreign players is the biggest problem of Indian law enforcement agencies to investigate the cases. And in case of suppose something happens like a Colonial Pipeline attack happened, India also had an attack like JNPT on JNPT. So it is getting the information from the foreign players, maybe private or maybe public or maybe anonymous organizations, or we can say a fly-by-night like companies. So getting that information from foreign soil is a difficult thing, and that is the biggest challenge. Yeah,
certainly. I would like to ask some more questions because I've heard some very interesting ones in the messages, but I realize we're down to the last 4 minutes. Would our guests mind waiting for about 5 or 10 more minutes to answer 1 or 2 more questions?
Yeah, no issue.
Okay. Then I will pick up from where Sir finished off about the lack of cooperation between organizations, between governments as well. I'm wondering if there is no global convention or treaty that governs the use of data or the response to cyber attacks. Is this something that the private sector would want? Is this something that governments are pushing for? Or is this something that seems like an impossible dream? Either of you can start us off on this one.
Very interesting questions. Huh? I just take that opinion as my opinion, not my organization's opinion. That's the first comment. So the point what I'm trying to add here is, when we are speaking about sharing information, right? It's mutual. It's a mutually beneficial thing which we need to agree on, as Dr. Rajput said, right? We need to have the treaty in place to do that. So there is a push happening at the industry layer. You might see in FSISAC, which is actually finance sector information security sharing platform. Same thing for healthcare. Same thing for in other areas also. There is something like there is some sharing happening. I don't say that's the fullest possibility that people are sharing information, sharing the incidents and what happened and how they are handling, but there is a move towards it, right? And the CERT is another one. Whenever there is an incident, ticket happens. I think Dr. Rajput can speak about it. So there is a collaboration between the CERTs in US, India, and other countries, so that you know when there is a incident happens, and you get to know that this is happening, and we can take some what you can say steps to address it, right? So while I say that there are a lot to do, as I said, we are not thick as thieves, but there is a lot to do, but there is a collaboration happening, considering the level of what we can say platform collaboration happening. Earlier, let me give an example, right? So earlier, people were worried to actually put their loads outside their data centers or even their own offices. Now, organizations are moving to cloud for the scalability, for the availability, resiliency, whatever. So which is actually what you are doing. What you are doing is you are creating your own private infrastructure on cloud, which means you are ready to leave some of these control outside, right? When you are doing it, when an organization is trying to do that, there is a risk in it. At the same time, there is an advantage of taking advantage of these benefits what we are getting in. Same applies to incident response sharing or incident sharing. So this is happening at the top layer. So there are, so considering, as I said, the adoption is slow, but there are agencies or intelligence agencies, open threat intel is right now available, which is actually figuring out, is there any attack happening in this industry, that industry? And there are areas of data minimization or data anonymization techniques are coming in, where you do not need to explain what exactly happened, which system or which industry, which company. Instead, so this is the incident, this is how the malware came in, and this is how it was penetrating, and this is what the impact it caused, so that it's easy for people to share through the cyber threat intel platforms, right? So while a lot more to be done, the platforms are getting the advanced aspects of ATPs, where you can't understand the whole story, but you can understand the mechanisms behind it, right? So knowing about the ATPs, understanding the tools and techniques behind it, and then sharing among these organizations, I think we will be able to do much better in future. And then one more aspect here is, as these advanced attacks are more towards the machine learning or AI-based technologies, I think we might need, even in the sharing platforms, even the threat intel platform, we need to utilize that. While we are not matured in that cycle, but there is a move, I find, not just in India, but across the nations, to address that as a platform, so that we can understand the threats much faster, either it is across the critical infrastructure, if it is across the banking sector, or it is for the finance sector, whichever it is, we would be able to get to know much earlier, and then the industries will get to it and then act accordingly. Back to you, sir.
Yeah. So a question is about whether the I think so. The question is that whether the pan world treaty about trade sharing or is the question, or I missed the question. I will request Charumati to read.
It's basically asking if we can look forward to any sort of global treaty or convention or anything that would govern these interstate relations that cause issues with cyber attacks.
It's a quite a great and big question. I think so. We have to explain hypothetically. First, to have a global treaty in cyberspace is an aspirational thing. No one wants to give away their powers. Suppose presently, who controls the DNS? Who controls the IP allocations? Who controls the network, deep sea cables? No one wants to give away the power that they have. First, take example of root servers having 1.3 billion people and host of data, half of the data of the world we are producing. Many websites, billions of websites are from India, but still we don't have a root server. These are the power controls or controls of the internet. Second thing, take about cyber. There is an attempt, if you see in UN, that intergovernmental a group is sitting and having that instead of having an ICANN as a private body or an NGO, it should be under the UN and an intergovernmental group. After election, that should rule the ICANN, or ICANN should be handed over to it. So that is still in UN's intergovernmental meeting. It is going on. No one is about to shed their power. If suppose a treaty is signed, these countries which are presently using, doing IP thefts, sponsoring the proxies, and those who are after stealing the technologies or corporate espionage will be facing the hit. And these companies will always, or these countries will always oppose such kind of move. But we about cyber, how it is in the space, how it is in the sea, how it is about suppose the WTO about business, but still its churning is going on. We can aspire to have it, but the earlier power structures need to be rebuilt, and rebuilding the power structure is very tough thing, and it causes it causes great turmoil. Second thing, if we talk about the cyber security industry, we should particularly, if we are focusing about threat intel sharing or treaty about that, then it is possible, because it's a threat which threat intels presently also informally it is being shared from CERT to CERT, organization. There are open, what Satyavathi told, that open threat sharing platforms that are available, but it is all informal and institution to institution associations. So if it make it mandatory, I think so it needs a great churning, still more harmonization of the regimes, particularly in different countries, and then it will be possible, because every industry, every sector is having their own standards, own ways of working. The harmonization of regimes needs to be also take place, and then considering the common interest, what is the common, we can say least minimum common, that is everyone can share. If that is figured out, this may be possible. That is my take.
Excellent. I think ending on something aspirational is the perfect stopping point. Therefore, to maintain harmony in this organization structure, I am now going to invite the co-founder of Asian Pathfinders to help close us off.
Thank you so much, Charumati. Actually, taking from the last questions, we understand that cyber world is a new aspect, considering other aspects of the nation states, which are much more debated and formulated, and there are rules and regulations. But in this cyber world, there is a lot of gray areas. And I'm sure in today's discussion, scholarly discussion have added in this area where, and I would like to thank our both the speakers, Dr. Rajput and Satyavathi, for enriching these sessions with their thoughts and their own experiences in this cyber domain. And I would like to also thank you for moderating this session and keeping this session engaging. And thank you so much everyone for joining us today, and looking forward to see you, all of you, for the next session, which will be on cryptocurrency on coming Saturday, next Saturday. And tomorrow also we have a workshop on stress and anxiety management for frontline workers during COVID-19. So I have shared the link in our chat box. Please do share and circulate this link to whomever you know who are working in this COVID-19 pandemic and their frontline workers, so they can join tomorrow's session. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Take care and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you to our speakers and Charumati. Take care. Have a good weekend.